All right, next up in our sort of series of prominent social thinkers, we have a gentleman by the name of Herbert Spencer. He was British. He lived 1820 to 1903. He contributed to a wide range of subjects: ethics, religion, anthropology, economics, political theory, philosopher, literature, biology, sociology, psychology. He was an incredibly influential philosopher, by far the most influential philosopher in his time in Britain, for reasons that we'll get to in a second. The biggest idea that he comes up with is a really concrete theory on the evolution of society. So he sort of is highly influenced by Spencer's ideas, and he modifies Spencer's ideas of the evolution of society. Spencer sort of lays out these three stages. Spencer builds upon those and comes up with a theory of his own about how societies evolve. He says that they evolve from simple, undifferentiated homogeneity into a complex, differentiated heterogeneity sort of society. So he says things go from being really, really simple and much the same to being really, really complicated and much, much different as societies evolve. I'm going to read a quote from his probably most famous, I would say, work. This was 1857, titled Progress and Its Law. Quote, "We believe we have shown beyond question that which the German physiologists have found to be the law of organic development, is the law of all development. The advance from the simple to the complex through a process of successive differentiations is seen alike in the earliest changes of the universe, to which we can reason our way back, and in the earliest changes of which we can inductively establish. It is seen in the geologic and climatic evolution of Earth and of every single organism on its surface. It is seen in the evolution of humanity, whether contemplated in the civilized individual or in the aggregation of races. It is seen in the evolution of society, in respect both of its political and economical organization, and it is seen in the evolution of all those endless concrete and abstract products of human activity which constitute the environment of our daily life. From the remotest past which science can fathom down to the novelties of yesterday, that in which progress essentially consists is the transformation of the homogeneous to the heterogeneous." Unquote. Simple to complex. Another interesting fact about Spencer is that he is the person that actually coined the term survival of the fittest. This is published in 1864, a work that he titled Principles of Biology on the Origin of the Species. Darwin's Origin of the Species was published first in 1859. Herbert Spencer was fascinated with Darwin's Origin of the Species, and it's important to note that Herbert Spencer's theories came first. He was talking about evolution of societies before, or perhaps at the same time, though Spencer published first, before Darwin is starting to write about the evolution of species in a biological sense. So sort of an interesting fact there. But Spencer becomes really fascinated with Darwin's theories, and he reads on the origin of the species, and he basically says, he coins the term sort of calling Darwin's ideas survival of the fittest. Darwin actually uses the term himself then when he writes the 5th edition of Origin of the Species. This was in 1869. He actually incorporates Spencer's term. So it's a common misconception that Darwin actually invented this term. It was actually Spencer writing commentary sort of on Origin of the Species where he comes up with this term, and then Darwin ends up using it in another future edition of Origin of the Species. So Spencer comes up with the idea of survival of the fittest. One thing that he's really well known for, perhaps most well known for, is this idea that we now in modernity have called social Darwinism. He never used this term. But social Darwinism is an idea that societies evolve from militant, simple, hierarchy, obedient societies to industrial, complex societies that are defined by voluntary social contracts. While Comte supported active reform, that is, sociologists going out and trying to change society based on knowledge that they've gained, Spencer was against active reform. He believed that society should be allowed to just evolve on their own without any sort of outside influence. This is largely based on his theory of social Darwinism and survival of the fittest. He believed that the same principles that applied to organisms, as Darwin lays out, also applied to members of a society. And he believed that over time, the unintelligent, the handicapped, the poor, the members of society that were less fortunate, if left for society to go on its own path, would basically all die out. And what would be left would be a society of the elite, the wealthy, the incredibly intelligent. And just given enough time, society would progress on its own to sort of be this exemplary example of the population of humanity. Nowadays, we think about that and really honestly would say, wow, what a dick. That doesn't apply at all. But like I said, he was the most influential theorist of his time. That is not an accident. That's because all of the wealthy members of British society were completely on board with his idea of social Darwinism. It's important to note that this is a time in British history when they were starting to establish social policies, welfare policies, and policies, shelters to house the homeless, and they were taxing the rich to pay for all of these policies. So as soon as Spencer publishes his ideas, you can imagine how popular they were with the elite members of British society. They all pointed to Spencer and said, look, this prominent philosopher is basically saying that we shouldn't be taxed and we shouldn't be helping the poor. We should just let them die off so then we will all be left. Nowadays, his theories of social Darwinism have been largely disproven and discredited, but that didn't prevent him from being incredibly influential at the time and still incredibly influential in sociology today, sort of laying the groundwork for thinking about the ways that society evolved, coining the term survival of the fittest.